Well, hi. My name is Coach Sibo. I am an Overwatch coach. And to give a little bit of details about myself and my credentials, I am currently working with Second Generation. They are a North American West contenders team, and we just finished our season. Didn't quite make it into playoffs. So, in my spare time off, I'm taking the opportunity to help out some players I work with in the past, hence the Alumni VOD review series. And whether that's going to be just this one video, I don't know. It just depends on if any other players send me VODs that want to make them public. Otherwise, it might just be this one. But as an analyst for the team, it's kind of good for me to just take a step back into coaching instead of as an analyst where I spend a lot of times crunching numbers, not really working directly with players, and especially spending a lot of time just staring at kill feeds. So to work with the game flow and help somebody out, I'm really excited about that. Now, this player is Registar, who was a player who I once coached on a team called Cocktail Riot when I was first starting coaching. And he joined our team as a Zarya specialist, basically playing Zarya out of the off tank position, where when we wanted our off tank player to be able to play Zarya, we'd sub him in, very similar to Spree with the Houston Outlaws. He would kind of play that role. But from working with him, I realized he really had a knack for playing DPS. So now he's kind of transitioning into that role. And for our team, he would kind of be the player we would, when we wanted to run multi DPS compositions, we'd kind of sub him in to in the off tank position to be able to play 3 DPS or 4 DPS depending on what we wanted to do. So since the team disbanded, he has taken the time to learn more DPS roles, and he's the kind of player who, when we played for us, had a good Widow, Sombra, Genji, so he really had the ability to go into hit scan or flex DPS. And I know this season of competitive Overwatch, he's been spending a lot of time learning Hanzo, so that's what we're going to be looking at today is Hanzo. And just to kind of give you guys what we're going to be looking at today, I have it written down here. And anyways, we're going to be focusing on several categories. And the first one's one of the major category is going to be the macro. And this is just thinking more forehead, right? And just how can we process the game and understand what's happening and how we fit into that picture. And then the next one is value. And this is specifically considering, are we getting enough value on our hero, or how can we get more value, and what is our purpose and all of that, right? And then the final thing is talking about contest swaps, and that's going to be on Tracer. So there's a point where he's on defense second. This is going to be on Paris. So as typical 2CP, after you lose a fight or you die, you might come back as a contest hero. And Tracer's a pretty good option just to be able to get back to point and maybe help focus down targets, because that's what's pretty important. So it's a good pick, but we want to talk about what you want to be doing as Tracer in this moment as a contest hero, and we'll be talking about when is it a good time to maybe look to go back into more of a stable composition after you win the fight. No spoilers, but that's what we're going to be taking a look at. So before I get started, I want to talk more or less about the role of Hanzo, and specifically, how are we going to get value with this hero, right? So Hanzo is a hero who can have really large impact or really small impact, depending on how you play him. There's a lot of heroes like that are more consistent, but heroes like Hanzo, heroes like Widowmaker, for different reasons, or in a lot of ways the same reasons, they're the kind of, you either are having a tremendous impact, getting those early picks, or you're not. Now, there's different areas that they can supply value, and that's what I want to talk about with Hanzo. And Widow's very similar in this regard, but we're just going to dig into this Japanese man. So first of all, he gets value from damage, right? So supplying damage, He's just a very straightforward hero in that regard. He's very spammy. He's a hero, unlike Widow. The difference is that he can supply more consistent damage and more chunks of damage to like tanks. So he has a lot of just overall damage pressure, where a Widowmaker has more overall pick potential. So just being able to supply damage that can lead to kills, that can help focus down tanks, to help with the shield break. That's really big value that you can get from Hanzo. Maybe the lesser values is zoning. Zoning's still pretty important, and the obvious one is going to be his Dragon Strike, and that's one that's can not only lead to kills but can cut off areas and put a lot of pressure on the fight. And as we're going to see, I think Regu does a pretty good job of using dragons appropriately. But another way that Hanzo can help with zoning is just playing in lanes. And if you can get the respect of your opponents, if they see Hanzo has this lane covered, then they might do something to try and defend that lane, like have their tanks occupy that lane, or they will just get out of dodge and not risk it. So that's one way. The Widow is even better at this, because her pick potential is higher. It's much easier to land the necessary hits to just take someone out. But the risk of dying immediately or just high burst potential in general, means that he can zone just by looking down an area. And if people see that, okay, Hanzo's covering this lane, then they might not play in it. And then the final one is just scouting, and that's with use of his I guess a little bit with his mobility of wall climbing and his little jump around thing he does, but mostly with his Sonic Arrow. So these are the three main ways that we want to be getting value as Hanzo. And so this is something that I'm going to look at with Regu. Is we're gonna, during each fight, we're gonna see which areas is he getting value, and we're gonna kind of have a counter showing. You had 3 ticks of value this fight. I don't really know what that's going to mean, but it's just, I think, a good way to say, how many times did you contribute to the fight in a meaningful way, and I think the times that he is contributing more, you're going to see that those fights come easier, and it seems like he's getting more impact and value using these 3 categories, versus when he, sometimes if he's kind of off doing his own thing, taking 1v1s, he might not be getting as much value into the overall fight. So there's that. We're also going to be talking about just kind of basic macro things. So we're going to have a larger focus on the macro, but I will talk about times when he's out of position. That's going to be a big thing to talk about, and just kind of how he's using his abilities, kind of those basic little tips on how his macro is playing. Maybe some ideas on how he could play the hero a little bit differently. And then the final thing we're going to look at is kind of the macro elements, and that's going to be mostly looking at team composition and just thinking through what's your role in the composition, how does that change based on the opponents you're playing and the composition they roll out, and just the importance of doing that. And this is something that you want to get into your practice routine, and as you're playing, the more that you can maybe take a step back and just think about these situations and how you play, what your part in all of it, the better you're going to do. So that's probably the biggest number one area that I see for Regu to work on. But I just wanted to show you guys what we're going to be going through. And with that, I want to get this footage rolling. I need to go back to pointer mode.
Welcome to Paris. Prepare your defenses.
Okay. So we have some screen changes. I'm going to roll forward. I don't really see the composition, but I am going to bring it over so we can talk about it. So let's get him. Okay, so match is coming close to starting. We don't have the clock. That's sad, but whatever. Anyways, here's the first composition. Left side is him, and right side is his opponents. The first thing I would recommend working on is to organize your mind and find a way of how you're going to process comps, and how you want to think through them. So the way I do it, this is how I do it as an analyst too. I always structure things the same. Is I lump my tanks first, and then my DPS players, and then my supports. So this is kind of how I think through it. And it doesn't matter how you do it, you don't have to do it my way, but having a way of how you're going to kind of categorize things in your mind can help you process information so much faster. Um, so with that, I have my main tank first, and then my off tank, and then my hit scan, and then my uh, flex DPS, even though Hanzo's not hit scan, but that's what the slot I would put him in, and then my flex support, and then my main support. And what that's going to turn into is basically goats, right? So that when they play goats, you got your Ryan, I'll just do letters, your Diva, your Zarya, so that keeps tanks at the top, and then I go Brig, Zen, Lucio. So then there's supports in the bottom. So that's just the way, like, as the GOATS meta came up, how I kind of categorized the heroes. And GOATS just, even though it's a kind of a sucky meta, everyone thinks so. Like, I'd say at least most people. And that's one of the benefits it helped with me, is just how I'm going to categorize player roles, and that kind of solidified it for me. So that's how I think of it in the specific order. And so as I am thinking of my own my own comp that I'm playing with, right? This is how I'm thinking about it. I'm like, okay, I have basically a bunker comp with Azaria, um, double spam Brigitte Mercy. So um, now that I've processed that and I have that information, as I start understanding their composition, I can think of them in the same way. So Reinhardt, Winston, okay, they have double main tank. That's pretty significant. McCree, Farah, so they do have a hit scan versus us who does not, but we have double spam. Farah, Mercy, Ana. So that's just that's just the starting level of being able to conceptualize. And this is especially important as you want to start getting into like ult tracking. If you're going to ult track, you have to know what they have. If you don't know what heroes are playing, then that's like the very initial starting level of understanding the macro, like in terms of what you're playing against and how to strategize against it. So even though this isn't, even though you're not the shot caller, even though you're not the ult tracker, these are the basic things that you want to be thinking about. So I'm going to clear this, and we're going to talk more about how you as Hanzo is going to fit into all of this. So let's just start with our team. And so as I mentioned, we have a bunker comp, right? So we have Orisa, which is the foundation of a bunker comp. And what that means is that we want to play in a way that we're holding space and that we can kind of receive them in an effective way, that they have to go through a lot of harassment until the point that they can try and overtake us. And hopefully by the point that they can close the distance, we've done enough damage to win. Typically, you'd want a Diva here, but we have a Zarya. One of my least favorite tank combos, to be honest, just because the Zarya trying to farm charge with the Orisa is pretty difficult. It's not until the enemy actually closes the gap that Zarya can get effective charge, because she's just spending a lot of time not brawling. If she can get charge early somehow, like with something pushing ahead and farming for her, then she can be really effective in the bunker, just because she can become really spammy with her right click. But leading up to that point, in the very early fight, she can be pretty difficult to pair with the Orisa. So again, we're not running hit scan. We're running Hanzo Junkrat. This is fine. What this means is that we have a lot of projectile pressure, and we have a high potential to burn tanks with this pairing. So especially with Mercy, this is going to mean that she can boost either one of us. Hopefully the Junkrat, even though we're going to see she's going to boost the Hanzo more. And if together we can, put chunks into the shield, we should be able to burn down tanks really fast and cause a lot of pressure. And then we have Brigitte, which, even though Brigitte's not able to get high value similar to Zarya, she's really good at protecting against an engage. So something that's going to run dive is going to not want to play against the Brigitte as much, so she can kind of help deny that. So she actually plays into the bunker comp pretty nicely. So overall, this composition is not too shabby, especially for gold level that we're playing with. So that's the core foundation of how we want to start, is we want to just think of our comp, Okay, we have bunker comp. We have spam heavy. That means we can burn tanks very easily, and it's going to be hard for them to engage into us because we have the Brigitte. Great. So now we've conceptualized our comp. Now, as the enemy is rolling out, we can start thinking of how do we have to play against them specifically? How do we have to kind of adapt the micro mechanics of our play style and how we're going to play it as a team to play against the enemy? So I'm going to clear this, and we're going to talk about the enemy. So we are bunker, and they are running double main tank, which is absolutely fantastic for us because that means they don't have a diva. And this is really, really good for us. Them not running a diva means that our damage is going to get through it. I mean, maybe not directly to the heroes, but we're going to get consistent shield pressure without them being able to do anything about it, other than pretty much hiding behind a corner, right? They have to use cover in order to block us. And this choke that they're going to have to walk through at the very beginning of Paris is not going to be fun for them. So, but they do have Winston, which means that they can rapidly engage into us and cut the distance very quickly. So I'm going to come back to this as we talk more about it, because there's other things to talk about. And one of that is they're running pharmacy. And that means that the Mercy is going to be above the air and helping out the Pharah, which we're going to see a lot. She plays very connected to him. But the Pharah is going to be our biggest risk in all this composition. Because she's the one who can kind of catch an angle. She can use boops to try and dislodge us. And we, as Hanzo, our job is going to want to be to contest her. That doesn't mean we have to hard focus her, which is one of the issues we're going to see. But we want to make sure that her having airspace is not a fun time, and she has to be careful with where she's going and might slow down her pace a bit. So we just want to, as Hanzo, keep eyes on her because we have Junkrat, Brigitte, Zari. We don't really have much to really contest her besides you, and Hanzo can do a pretty decent job of at least applying pressure to the Pharah. But because they have Winston and Pharah, who can get behind the shield pretty decently, I'd say as Hanzo, you'd want to play behind the bunker significantly. Not right at the shield, but kind of a ways back. That way, as a Winston decides to dive, or as a Pharah tries to get around the shield, that you still have some space for the Hanzo to become effective. If, say, you're at the shield and you're playing here and the Winston dives on you and the Pharah comes around to get rocket spam from the side, now everybody's in the thick of it, right? However, if you are, if everyone's playing the shield and you're back here as the Winston's engaging or the Pharah's coming around to poke, then you still have a lot of uncontested lanes that you can help burn down the Winston, still deny the Pharah airspace. So by playing back, you can assist with that. Or they have to, because you're isolating yourself in the back, they might have to do something to try and focus you. But since they don't have any sort of flanker, Genji, Tracer that can come in and give you direct pressure, you're in a pretty good spot to just play back and play a little bit passive, allowing things to develop as your bunker comp kind of sets things up. So this is one of the bigger issues that I see in your defensive style playing with your wrists off the bat, and it's what's going to kind of throw the first fight. I'm talking a little about this, even though it's only going to be for one fight, but one fight's really important, and I think you had the composition to potentially full hold this map and make this VOD review a little bit shorter, ultimately, if we could have just played this a little bit differently, because I think our composition matches up very well against them, so long as we can take care of the Winston as he dives in and burn him down, and so long as we can burn the Pharah and just kind of contest that airspace. I'm going to drink some tea because I'm getting a little stuffy with my cold. Okay. So, last thing to talk about is the support line, which in my opinion is the best thing about them. An Ana Mercy support line is pretty strong in that it's going to allow them a lot of sustain and a decent amount of firepower with the Mercy's damage boost. So it allows the Mercy to full pocket the Pharah without having to go and heal the tanks as much, because the Ana can kind of take care of that job. And then Nano, she can use Nano to kind of sustain the tanks too. So it's a pretty decent composition in terms of their healers. But on both ends, there's some strange things. Now, because they're running on a Mercy, that means they have no support ults, or defensive support ults. And what that means is that you paired with Zarya can be extremely potent. And oftentimes, when you're playing Hanzo, you can kind of just use your dragons for burning and zoning. But when you have Zarya and in a situation where they will never have Transcendence and they will never have Sound Barrier, then you should be comboing with Zarya all the time. All the time, because it's basically going to be a team fight win. If you can get the Reinhardt, the Winston, the Ana in a Grav and put a dragon through it, they have no way to stop it. They don't even have a diva that can potentially eat the Grav. They don't even have a diva that can potentially eat the dragon. Like, they are freaking screwed. Like, unless... I think it's just two ults completely wins the fight. And you can get those ults every 2 or 3 fights. So, like, that's a ton of value out of just 2 ultimates, right? So, this is another thing that I'd like to see as we go into it. But that's enough talk about compositions. We still haven't seen any footage yet, and we've talked a lot about just overall game theory. But these are... I want to point this out because these are things that you should be looking through as you're going into a match and potentially bring yourself away from the game just to think through these concepts and think through their compositions and yours. And this is why VOD reviewing is so helpful. So, let us continue into the video. I wish I could see how long I've been rambling about this stuff, but I can't. Okay. 5-4. This is the first mistake. And one powerful thing about Hanzo is he can scout their composition, especially in gold. Like, people just hug that opening gate. You can run up and put a Sonic in their door and scout them. But what is the cooldown of Sonic Arrow class? The answer is 6 seconds. And when did we use Sonic Arrow? Let's see. Epic Pen. I'm going to read my key commands because this shouldn't help. Shift 2, Shift 3. Okay. Hopefully this helps me. So at 4 seconds, we launch our arrow. So at what point will our Sonic Arrow stop? 2 seconds after the gates open. There's no way that this first Sonic Arrow is going to do anything at all. So there's no reason to have shot it at all. I mean, you might as well have saved it or pushed up for 4 seconds and like shot it closer to the door. That way you could kind of scout and get the next cooldown for when they're pushing when they do. But in this case, it's very much pointless. Like, the Sonic Arrow is going to do nothing. So we're starting by playing the shield. This is good. This is where I'd start too, just playing right on the shield. Gives you cover. If they want to run anything like a Widow or whatever that's going to try and pick you, you're very much in safety and can line up your more accurate shots by playing behind a shield. Okay, so you try to combo with the halt. That's good. So this first Sonic Arrow is going to be our first point of value. So we're going to do a little value counter up here. So we have Sonic. Is it 2? Okay. Yeah. All right. And I don't know if this really counts. So we're calling this shield pressure, and then you kind of, I don't know. I'm just going to call this 1 point for right now. I'm not going to really count that as a point of value by pressuring the shield. But one thing I want to talk about is, first of all, you take this jump down, and I don't get the point of this at all. Like, you are now completely ahead of your team as the person. Now that you see that they have Pharah and Winston, you want to be the furthest one back to defend them. Now you're putting yourself in an extremely dangerous position by playing right at the choke as Hanzo. This positioning is really, really bad, and ultimately, as Hanzo, you like to play extremely close and brawly, and I'd like to see you adjust your playstyle a bit to try and play from range when it's necessary, and come up into the fight when it's a little bit safer to do so. A situation like this is extremely dangerous. While you might have a little bit more accuracy hitting your shots, your potential of dying is significantly greater. Okay. So we put our storm arrows into the shield, and What I would recommend is the way to play against the Pharah. You want to try and save your storm arrows for her, because your storm arrows have the potential to burst her down even through mercy healing. You can put a volley of storm arrows to try and finish her off. So generally what you do is you know hit your first normal shot into the Pharah, and then you'll pull out storm arrows and bang 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 burn her down. Um, and that'll at least, you know, if it doesn't kill her, it'll probably zone her out of the sky. She'll know that she can't stay where she is. But you tend to put your storm arrows into the tanks and into the shields, and then using your regular arrows to hit the Pharah. And I just don't think that this is a very effective way of using your damage capabilities. I'd recommend trying to zone the Pharah, save your or use your storm arrows when you see an opportunity to burn a tank, not to burn the shield. Or if you see that the shield's weak and you want to burn it down to help focus the tank. But just to randomly spam it in a situation where the shield is still full health, I think that it's a waste of storm arrows. So Farah is shot. Storm arrows are still off cooldown. This is an opportunity where, yeah, the Winston's attacking you, and you're going to jump down. But you might pull out the storm arrows and see if you can finish Farah off, and that would be a pretty good momentum swing for you. So again, we drop down so that we isolate ourselves over here in this. I'm sorry. Sure. I'm learning this tool. I'm used to using Visor Mayhem. It's my first time using EpiPen, so see how it goes. You were playing down on this low ground down here, right? And that's just completely isolate you from your team, even though you felt the pressure of the Winston. You just kind of went into autopilot and dropped down. So just kind of some positioning errors here. That's going to lead you to being the first pick. And with your Mercy, who is pocketing you, you also put your Mercy in a tough spot that she died. So that's 2 picks now because of positioning errors. And I think if you could have played further back, maybe playing on point, playing kind of over on this bridge area, even playing back by the pillar, so where the Orissa's playing up here, or playing over on this left side or something like that, you know, you could have had more survivability and not allowed this to happen while still applying about the same amount of pressure as you are by playing so close. Okay. And continue. So I'm sorry to say, fight 1, you had 1 point of value that I thought you offered the team, and that was your Sonic Arrow at the very start. And you could have had more value if you used your Sonic Arrow at the door to scout the comp even better. But really, you got 1 Sonic Arrow as they're at the choke that gave you guys just a few seconds notice of what they're coming out. Not even a ton of value. Ultimately, I think this was your very worst fight of the entire match, and by far, this first point loss was your fault more than anybody else's. So, clear this. We're going to fight point 2, fight 1. Nice little cheeky Sonic Arrow up there. Scout. Make sure you can scout the Pharah, and you still scout the low ground. So I really like that Sonic spot. It doesn't really give us value. I'm not going to put a point of value for that because all we know is that they're coming, and we should know that they're coming. So if anything, the only real thing that offers is kind of the pace of which they're attacking point. So at this point, we also, Fire Strike right there, our Orisa swapped to Reinhardt. And this isn't going to change much. I think that this is a good move. The Reinhardt's going to pair a lot better with the Zarya. It's going to allow your Reinhardt to be brawly up in these chokes, up in this area, and all these halls. So that's a really good place for Reinhardt to be able to play. On the flip side, if you wanted to play the Orisa, you'd probably be playing back on the corners or playing off on this left side ledge and kind of rotating with them. So this allows your team to be more aggressive as they're coming through the gate. So I like the change from your Reinhardt to go this hero. And for you, it means that you can play a little bit more aggressive too, to be able to play up with the shield. Let's see. A race. Here we go. Nope. We're going to continue. Okay. So, the second Sonic Arrow here is really good. Bango, right there. And because what we can see, what this gives us, is where it shows that they're going right side. So this Sonic Arrow is huge. It tells us the pathing that they want to use. Now we know that at least some of them are going right side. And what you're going to do is you're going to shift. Now, we saw McCree and we saw Mercy go this way, which probably means that the whole team's going this way, probably means that the fair is going this way, but it's not for sure. You could have potentially gotten baited because there could still be a fair looking this way. There could still be a Winston who could dive you and put a lot of pressure. And with your positioning, you're not respecting this lane. This is another thing that I'm going to want you to work on, is figuring out line of sights and respect them. Unless you have the necessary information to know that everybody is going right, you're in a pretty vulnerable spot here. Now, this is going to be one of the better plays that you make of the entire match coming up. But at the same time, something we can learn from is that you could potentially be punished while trying to make this play. You don't in this case, but just something to be mindful of. A really good pick. So one thing I'm noticing in your play is your crosshair placement is really, really good. So you had that lined up at the head level, ready to go. And I think that's one of the things that allows your aim mechanics to be as good as they are, is you have really good crosshair placement. So we're going to put a couple ticks of value that occurred. We had what? Sonic Arrow? And we had pick. So these are really strong. And one of the picks got out res, one of the better values that the Mercy can have. And while doing so, you still got another pick. This team would be wise to just not push this at this point and kind of regroup. But they're going to engage it. Now, when you're up in the fight, that means you can be more aggressive. When you're down in the fight, it means you have the choice of being aggressive to try and turn the fight in your favor, or backing off and regrouping with your team. You kind of have options, but when you're up in the fight, you should always try and be aggressive. In this case, you take kind of a passive maneuver by going back to your team. Now, I want to show this site one more time. Bang. Kill. So we see at this point we see that they're committing to staying in. If they didn't, then they'd probably be getting out. And I don't know if you're scared because of this rocket shot here, but this is staying in this position is pretty good at this point. Again, I would still be a little nervous because we haven't seen everything that you could potentially be pushed. But I think playing this wall and just being mindful of what could come down this way, you can have a lot more pressure just by kind of guarding or having a lane of sight this way while your team pushes this way. The more choices you make the enemy team have on how they want to push and how they want to engage means that the more likely they are to make a mistake. If you're playing in this spot and the team's playing this spot, they have to choose, do we want to continue pushing into this team with less numbers so that we are out of Hanzo's line of sight, or do we want to push the Hanzo himself, allowing the rest of the team to have a flank angle on us, or kind of spread out between the two? So of course in competitive play they're not going to be able to make both decisions at the same time, or as like a simultaneous group. They're going to make all their decisions by themselves, unless there's someone who's an active shot caller and like, we're doing this, guys, you know, which is very unlikely, especially in EU comp where people never talk. It's likely that just by you being in that spot, even though you might get pressed and you can regroup with your team at that point, you're going to cause them to make more mistakes just by your positioning having a split angle. So I'd recommend in this case, or at least something to experiment, is taking these off angles from your team as Hanzo that you can have kind of a side shot and make them make the choice on what they want to do about it. Now that you're going over on this side, they have just one area that they have to look and fight. So Fair is going to come and take a flank angle now that you got out of there. And we're going to fight her, miss a couple shots, lose a one-on-one. It happens. But the early picks that you brought to the fight wasn't enough to allow you to win it. I think they should have probably backed out as a team if this was a real match. But they decided to continue into your team and lost it. So good job, team. You guys won. So we're at almost to our first Dragon Strike. This ult charge time is pretty low, and I think the biggest reason why is how we played our first fight. If we could have played that a little safer, we could have actually gotten more damage because we played more passively. Just because you have less time being contested. This is a big thing. They had someone who got, I don't know, just DC'd from the game or whatever. So now you guys are 6v5. This is awesome. Yeah, so that was a good Sonic right there. So we're going to give you a point for Sonic Arrow. So I want to talk about this moment, and this comes down to just kind of passive ult tracking. And I felt this just from watching the game, is that this Reinhardt likely has Shatter. This is going to the third fight, and he hasn't used a Shatter yet. So think about Reinhardt having Shatter right now. How freaking scary is this hallway in your positioning with Reinhardt having Shatter? And you decide to walk in a straight back line. I think this is to try and bait them into the hall so you can Dragon, which is a decent play. But your entire team is really susceptible to a Shatter right now. And either he isn't thinking right, or he doesn't have it yet just because of extremely low damage, which I think is unlikely. I think he does have it at this moment. But look at just how dangerous this is for your team. Reinhardt's finally getting in, and he's still swinging his hammer instead of ready to block it, which you're not going to have Reinhardts often in gold who are thinking about blocking Shatters. So your positioning is very, very dangerous in this moment. We're going to talk about Dragon Strike because you do use it here. So I'm going to give you a point for Dragon. Oh no! I need my tool. Dragon. And this is a really, really good Dragon. This is one that I think this is a moment where you want to use it, as they're coming through this choke. And there's two ways you could use it. You could drop back like you did. Of course, the situation in which they had Shatter makes this a little bit riskier. Especially at the slow pace it took you to kind of get out of range. Like if you're going to try and kite it back, like you need to get out of there if they're going to have this. But in the meantime, something else you could have done is right at this moment. So they have Shatter. You could dip over to this left side, and this would still allow them to kind of come in, because you're displaying weakness by saying like, oh crap, there's a Reinhardt, I'm gonna dip around the corner, and then you can drag in a kind of cross angle at the doors that will, instead of having the straight up angle that you have, you could have an equally impactful dragon coming out from the side angle. And it's also a dragon that's going to reach faster and give them less time to react to because you're closer to them. So just another way to think about dragons. I don't think that the baiting and then zoning the entire hallway was a bad idea. It's just another option that you can think about is dragoning from a closer angle, as you kind of in a way that this is equally going to kite them just by getting out of the way. Okay, so remember they were down one, and we just got picks with our dragon. Our dragon got a kill. I think this is a moment where as a team you want to be very aggressive and be pushing this. Their leaver has recently joined the game, and they're just kind of playing at the choke. I think playing aggressive with your Reinhardt there would have potentially led to picks, and now that you're down some and they're Valking, we are actually in a worse spot than if we would have just played aggressive and kind of chased the kills out. So I need to stop this. Okay, so we're going to clear this because we're technically going into a new fight here. Actually, I'm just going to bring it back. We're just going to talk about this. I don't think I had notes on this one. Okay, so one thing here is just kind of how you're playing this door. And I think as anything with range, the more you can just play a corner for cover, the more likely are you to just like, at a moment's notice, dip to the left. You know, if you're playing this left wall over here, you can just dip over and get out of range. But because you're playing this door straight in the middle, your ability to negate damage with the wall cover is much limited. So here you're going to eat a fire strike. You're going to be more susceptible to poke from their team with with the McCree and with the Farah. So in this moment, you know you're at a high risk just by how you're playing. If you can play closer to the wall, then you have the ability to kind of evade these damages a little bit better. So eat a fire strike, and it's going to put us in a tough spot as they're engaging. Winston dives in. Falk comes in. So relocation, that's a big thing. As they're pushing in, you want to get in a spot that you can be the most effective. However, you continue fighting on point in this moment and continue trying to brawl as Hanzo. I think it would be better to try and move around the outskirts, maybe move up into this left room here, or jump back on this back left or back center ledge where there's also, I think, a mini pack there. These would be a little bit better locations for you to survive and still apply pressure. I think as Hanzo, like this is such a mid-range point. Like the way that the second point is constructed is pretty cool. You know, on the far outside area, right? So there's, oh no, stop. Okay, so you have, oh no, I thought I clicked the pen. Okay, you have your outskirts areas, right? Kind of like this, with paths, in your big courtyard. The courtyard's pretty open, so you have this big open space out here. You have really choky areas where, short range damage heroes are going to be good. This is where your goats comps are going to be good, where mate can be good. And then when you get to point, you have a lot of mid range again, but sometimes even really long lengths of sight, like from here to here. You know, that's pretty far range. So as Hanzo, you can use this to your advantage. Of a hero who wants to be playing at mid-range is by just working the outskirts. And by working the outskirts, you have the ability to, be able to contest from the side. But because you're playing, back this up a bit, because they're playing on point, now you're taking all these short-range engagements where, a better hero, potentially Tracer, like we're going to see, again, even McCree would be a lot better in this situation of playing on the point itself, even though I'd say McCree playing on the outskirts would also be ideal. As Hanzo, this is just not really where you want to play. You want to be, working the perimeter, and by playing on point, you're just not really playing the character to his full intent in terms of his range advantage. So they're capping. This does look like an iffy fight, so this is the moment where Regu's going to turn into a Tracer hero and come out to point, and I think that's a good move. It's a situation where you want to get back to point as fast as possible, so I think a speed hero is a good choice, and Tracer is a good hero to just try and help clear out point, because she does have a decent amount of damage. So in terms of contest situations, you have the option of stalling, you have the option of getting kills, and generally you want to do a bit of both. So picking a hero who can just burn something down, that's why a lot of times we'll see people come out as Widow, come out as McCree, come out as Bastion, heroes that are slow, but they have the ability to try and clear point. And you'll have people who will come out on the Moiras, or they'll come out on the Tracers, or they'll come out on the Doomfist, who have the ability to maybe get a pick still, but mostly be able to get to point and just try and put pressure on it, right? You'll even sometimes have the Maze who are just, being able to just absorb time. So you have to, there's a lot of different options, and I don't think Hanzo's a terrible option to come out here, even if you did, because you have an option to try and clear point. And since you have some picks in your favor, That's a good thing, but I like the idea of coming out on Tracer here, especially because your ult charge isn't very high. Even Hanzo ult doesn't really matter a ton. Coming out as Tracer is a pretty good idea. So here we go. You know the menus well, you pick Tracer really fast. Okay, situation. You come out and immediately start shooting Pharah. And I think this just kind of goes back to just the way that you are over-focusing Pharah in general. You spend a lot of time as Hanzo trying to shoot her, and now we're going to Tracer, and we're going to see just how often you're trying to contest the Pharah. Where, in my opinion, I think Tracer should more or less be dueling the tanks. And the biggest thing is just trying to see where your teammates are killing. What are they shooting? Where are they focusing their attention? And as Tracer going out and just helping pressure that down. That's the biggest benefit that Tracer can have, is realizing who's weak, who's being pressured, and help them out. And what we're going to see on your Tracer here is you will look at a target, put a clip into them, go to the next target, put a clip into them, go to the next target, put a clip in them. And so you're overall putting pressure on everything, but you're not tilting the scale enough to completely get a pick. And in a situation like contest time, especially on defense where you have the spawn advantage, you want to just get a kill. If you can get a kill, that's going to allow your team to start making moves as they're coming back from spawn to get another kill and ultimately over time bring this fight back into your favor. So as Tracer, you want to see who's being focused, who's weak, who can I focus down. And in this moment, Pharah's weak. I think this is a good time to try and focus the Pharah, so this is good. Okay, now the Grav's out, and you go to the Reinhardt. I think this is a good move. This is a good transfer at this point. Alright, so here's just a little bit of awareness. You're inside a bubble, and I think you might kind of realize that it's there, and then you're like, crap, there's a bubble, and then you try and shoot it, and I don't know, your reaction time on how to deal with the situation just takes a really long time, whereas a single blink can take you out of it, and you can be focusing this Pharah again. But there's more going on. We can hear the Winston. Winston jumps, and we're still fighting the Pharah. There's a Winston behind us. Winston now primals. We're still shooting the Pharah way out of range. And now we finally switch over to the monkey and help focus him down. This is, I think, as soon as the monkey dives, you should try and peel and help out, because that's going to be the most likely target that your teammate's focusing. You can't see anybody focusing the pharmacy, so trying to help with the monkey is definitely the call as soon as you see him. So monkey jumps out, you pursue. Yeah, it's a good idea to pursue, but when you realize that there's 4 other teammates, you need to not go in with them. So unfortunately, we trade out. They're smart to kind of regroup and restabilize. And now that they have a pick on your Reinhardt and now you, this is going to allow them to get more pressure on the point. So we're still kind of in this kind of iffy, are we going to win? It's still not in our favor. You have Pulse Bomb coming up. Do we want to switch? Yes or no? I think coming out as Tracer is the right call. You have the potential to get a pick. And remember how important just getting a kill is. In these contest situations, you have a potential to get a kill, or at least to help in some degree. And you're going to get back to point really fast. So staying Tracer, good call right here. And we whiffed the Pulse Bomb. I think this is a little rushed. I think we could have taken a more calculated approach. And I'm going to say, as I've watched this video already, I think you really need to work on Pulse Bombs with your Tracer. You kind of just lob it out there and hope for the best. And I think in this case, this is pretty showing too, where you just kind of throw it out there and hope it connects with the Winston from a pretty decent range. Like, that's a far throw for a Pulse Bomb. Like, you can easily just blink, close the gap, and stick them. So I'd like to see you work a little bit more on your Pulse Bombs and just figuring out the range and trying to get like blink sticks and stuff like that. Back to focusing the Pharah. Now we swap to the Mercy. The Mercy wasn't even really that weak. Now we're on the Winston who jumped in. I think this is a good swap. We allow Mercy to get the res, though. I backed it up. So So Mercy, you hear the swoosh, swoosh. I think as that's happening, you could potentially jump over the Mercy. And you see Zarya trying to focus down the Mercy too. Back to focusing the Pharah. Her team has disappeared to... Alright, so 3 clips to finish her off. I mean, that just shows how weak Tracer is to Pharah. Like, yeah, she can put in the damage to eventually burn her, but it's not until the team fight's pretty much over that you're going to confirm that kill. Unless she's going to come close to the ground. You know, I think you just really need to look at other targets other than Pharah. As Hanzo, you want to deny airspace, not hard focus her. If you hit a shot with your main arrow, try and finish her off with your storm arrows. As Tracer, you want to pretty much help the team with whatever's on the ground. So I think just in general, overly concerned about the Pharah. And if you're going to be that concerned about the Pharah, might as well switch to McCree here. Might as well go to Widow or Ashe, something that can deal with her a lot more consistently. I like the idea of pushing out here just to get some charge and keep focusing. In this moment, we had an option to potentially swap. I think it's good to stay because they are, in this case, soft resetting. So I like the idea of pushing out, trying to get some more ult charge. And at this moment, you could be scouting too. Again, in EU, people don't talk. So, of course, you're not going to relay what's happening or who you're focusing. But at least in your mind, you're getting information on how they're engaging. It's going to help you as a player play a little bit better by scouting, even if it's just for yourself. So they're coming main, you're going to a flank angle. You're occupying Mercy's time and she Valks. This is good. Yep. Good disengage there. I think he took a quick second to shoot the Reinhardt. When you're playing against the McCree, you just want to get out of there. Because he has the ability to just, in that time, he could just 180 flick, roll into you, flashbang, even in your blink range. So he could have potentially gotten you there. Something you gotta be careful of, and you're gonna see the McCree kill you eventually. I think it's this life. Yeah. You have all your abilities up too. So yeah, just don't want the McCree to get you like that. Like that was just way too easy for him to get that kill on you. Okay, so we're still in a desperate situation. You were the first death again in this spot, just by playing your aggressive positioning and not being mindful of what McCree can do. So I think coming out here on Tracer, especially with Pulse Bomb. Oh, we got rezzed. Hey. I don't know why Mercy went for that res. She probably dies here, right? Yeah, she died. So, so we have Pulse Bomb coming up. This is good. Okay. Do you see this? Like, let's slow it down. Like, you like flick up, and like this is just, you need to work on the pulse bombs, and you just lob them. Like, we need to work on this a bit. We're going into the Matrix. I just don't understand. Just something you gotta work on, buddy. Okay. Do you see what happens in this moment? There's a little interaction, and you're still kind of in your little mode where you're swapping the target, swapping the target, swapping the target. And you see this Juicy Ana in the back. Yeah, Juicy Ana. But in the meantime, you have Mercy at about half health. And it's always better to try and finish off a target that you have weak. In the meantime, Brig has this ability called Shield Bash that stuns the target. And she stuns the Mercy. Watch. So Mercy's half health right there. And Brig just stunned her. See these little stars on her head? That means she got knocked silly. So if you can just help out the Brig here, Brig's going to start swinging her whip thing around. And if you can put in a clip into this Mercy, you probably get the kill on her right here. But you switch targets to the Ana, who's fully health. instead of helping your team focus down a target. So this is just not being mindful of what your team's doing and playing purely for yourself. And even with that, you're not taking full fights. You're taking these little half. I'm gonna put one clip into you. I'm gonna put one clip into you, and not really going that extra little bit to finish off a target. So now Mercy's out. She doesn't die. She's half health. Look at her over there, so weak. But we're fighting the Ana. So those are a lot of headshots in the McCree. That was nice. So it come with whole hog. You got the combo there on him. I don't know if you're focusing him because of the whole hog. It's probably just you saw a new hero and wanted to shoot them too. Happen to land some headshots and get the assist there. I like the continuation on the Ana. So you go for these blink melee kills, and on this situation you come past her, and something you'll see a lot of the pro players do, probably all of them, is when they blink, they'll do like a little flick with their melee, as they'll try like 180 flick, because the melee works that wherever you're looking during the duration that the animation will get hit. So even though, say if I blink up to this hog, and if I for some reason blink past him like you did to this Ana, if I 180 a melee, I can come around with that pistol and get that full 180 coverage during the animation phase, and be more consistent landing that damage. So just something to start maybe working into your blink melees is doing a flick around and trying to get that full 180 damage. Mercy's weak. Keep focusing her. Keep focusing her. Alright, we're good. Okay. It is at this moment. This is the moment the fight is cleanly won for the first time since we swapped to Tracer. I think you should go back and swap to a new hero. I don't think that Tracer is great against their composition. I think the Hanzo would be better. They're still running... Here, I'll come grab this thing. They're still running their same composition. Reinhardt, Winston, McCree, Pharah, on a Mercy. And I think the Hanzo plays pretty well against this, especially because Junkrat can't do shit about the Pharah. It allows you to have something that can kind of suppress it. I think in this spot you could also go McCree. Potentially Ashe or Widow might be okay, but I think Hanzo, McCree, maybe Soldier might be better in this situation. And I think that playing the Tracer here is just kind of just too tunnel vision-y on continuing with what you're doing. Whereas if you can be proactive about your swaps a little more, this pulse bomb isn't going to be nearly as impactful as just having the right pick. I think Timothy is right here. Oh, what a sleep. So you get extremely lucky. You should be first pick here again. And I think this is just going into your positioning and how you're playing aggressively and getting punished for it. I mean, if they were not throwing the game, you should be dead here and they should be able to engage on this. But luckily they don't kill you and you're able to escape. So I think blinking into the McCree here again is really dangerous because of the whole flashbang. It's just not enough respect for the McCree, and just something you need to be mindful of. So you're going to farm a pulse bomb again, and this pulse bomb throw, it lands because of how close the McCree is, but I still don't think that it's a good throw. It doesn't seem, it's still one of your just flicky, I'm going to lob it up, and this one happens to connect. So I'm going to bring it back to that. And by the way, I'm not going over each fight and, you know, the value you're adding, specifically because that was meant for Hanzo, so I'm not doing it for Tracer.
Heroes never die. When we hope the witch
So a lot of clips to try and kill this Ana. I definitely want to work on tracking a bit more. I think just the chaotic movements that you have is throwing off your aim a bit. And so I'm the same way personally. Like my aim is really terrible and my movement's good, but you want to find a balance. This Ana is pretty good prey, and if you can maybe tame your movements a little bit, just to really focus that aim and get it. You know, she doesn't have a very tough movement pattern. She's just kind of jumping little mini strafes, but pretty easy target to hit. If you just focus in, get to the right distance, play in the right distance, and try and focus her down, I think it shouldn't take these 8 clips that you're trying to put into her. Where'd the Ana go? We were doing really good at focusing on, and now we have no idea where she went. It's just now we're gonna probably go find a new target. Oh, there's the Ana. Okay, it's just we're losing track of the target we're supposed to be on. I think a good time. That was a good time to focus the Pharah, and now we're shooting the Mercy. It's
Rains from above.
there's a Winston point. Okay. Oh, Winston got out. That's funny. So you get baited out. This is a good relocation. But use 3 blinks to get out at 24 health when you have recall up. So recall is going to get you back at the same spot while bringing your health back, while you ensure you don't die. Try and take main back with 3 blinks. I'm surprised you got out here, honestly. Just recall. You're still in main, still in lane of sight. Okay. Very, very dangerous. Go for a blink pulse bomb. We missed, but that's okay. I think it was a good try. Pursuing the Reinhardt here is really good, especially the Junkrat. You guys tag together, so that's a good job. Realizing that the Reinhardt's vulnerable there, and then helping out the Junkrat to finish him off. Oof. Yep. So you took a rocket and took another rocket with abilities. So I don't think a recall was necessary there, because you're at that point you had come from here to here. Just another blink to get out of dodge though. So just kind of low reactions, not really using your movement to the fullest as Tracer to try and keep yourself alive.
This is not your time. Our time is running out. Everyone get on defense. Heroes never die. Just
All right.
rains from above.
So we're just gonna skip ahead here. We go back to Hanzo. We see a Zarya soldier. This soldier used to be Zarya. He went soldier because he's mad that you didn't play it skin. Basically, that's how it goes. We have Ana coming out. So we see Ana Roadhog. What does it say? Moira switched to the Zarya, which means that your Zarya swapped to something else. So at this point, we don't even know our full composition. We're just not thinking enough at the start of the game. We're not thinking how we fit in our composition, because we don't even know what our composition is. Like, that's so important. Just the first step is making sure that we're in the right headspace to know how we're going to function. So we're going to go back into Microsoft Paint, and we're going to take a look at our composition. I got it tracked down because I was eventually able to figure it out over time what you played. But you should know what your composition is. And your composition is a bit worse than how you started, and I think that's because people are triggered. They didn't have hit scan. It's whatever. I think the Hanzo is fine. But they got fed up with that fair, so they're going to play soldier. So our tanks, I ordered it like so because, I don't know, it's 2 off tanks. It makes sense this way in my mind. Roadhog Diva, so you don't have a main tank, which is kind of sad, but it is what it is. You guys are going to do just fine. And then you have Ana Moira, so tank line and your support line. are pretty gross. You have way too much healing, not needed at all. The Anamura combo, Roadhog, Diva, just kind of a gross tank line. Um, the real purpose for that might be more of against a dive comp to just really punish the Winston or the Diva. Um, and then for your even for your DPS line, like just pure mid range. So, what are the benefits of your comp? How should you play? And really, you don't have. The benefit is that your tanks will probably have a lot of sustain as they're pushing in, but you guys have a lot of range. You guys, you have you who's mid range, you have soldier who's mid range, and so going through that choke, you probably want to be more patient and allow things to develop. You don't want to do too much on your as yourself as Hanzo. You just want to kind of help poke from range, maybe try and get a pick, maybe try and help pressure some shields, until things open up. And just kind of the way that first point is set up, right? You have a tiny choke which leads into another tiny choke. If people want to avoid the choke, they go through another smaller choke, and then you have this platform, little cul-de-sac area, goes into the building, up back to the platform and across the bridge, yada yada, and on the point, right? So they have the option to go through choke, through this tiny sucky choke, and if you want to avoid that choke, you can kind of go through it and then come through this smaller choke through the rooms, or you can come into this cul-de-sac and avoid it. But even if you avoid it, you still have to either choose to come back main where it's more open, or go through more tiny chokes, and so until you can finally hop off the bridge and try and get the point. So the pathing here is just very, very, very choky, and they have this really nice platform that people usually set up to try and defend them. And in my with this composition, you don't really have a way that you can push chokes very well. You don't have, you and soldier are very mid-range, more longer range than a lot of comps that would want to push through chokes. So what you want to do is you want to do as much damage before, shooting through the choke and pressuring before you actually access it, or allow things to develop. Like say, your tanks push in and can occupy some space while you get this crazy ton of healing from Ana Moira. Like, the tank shouldn't die at this point, right? They're going to have a ton of healing. So allow them to kind of occupy space and allow things to develop, and then push in with them. Now, this is mostly what you're going to end up doing, but this is what you want to be thinking through in your mind. It's like, okay, we're going through a freaking crazy choke with really not a main tank and two tanks that can't really take space very quickly, and with a lot of mid-range. Like, okay, I'm going to just play passive and kind of poke as things develop. And this is ultimately what you do, but I just want to talk through it so that we can process it. Now, as we're going to unveil their composition, we're going to see that their composition is rather better than ours. And they have the Reinhardt Diva, which means that finally they have Diva that can gobble our spam up a bit. And so that's going to slow you down a bit, or it should, even though I think her Matrix usage is quite terrible. They too have a soldier, a Reaper, who are going to see, so engaging into them is going to be tough, but in the meantime, the Reaper plays in really well with what we want to do, that we would just want to play from range, and what that means is the Reaper is going to do really nothing in the early fight, while the soldiers can kind of match each other, and you bring that extra bonus of a lot of extra damage supplied in the kind of the range poke phase, while the Reaper can't really do anything if he's playing with the shield, or he can play a flanky style, which could potentially get him punished. They have Baptiste Ana, so they have the immortality upon engagement, which is not a big deal. I think our composition plays pretty well into Baptiste. And then they have the Ana, so that's kind of their main sustain. So that's kind of, I think that the way we want to play into this is exactly as we're talking about. This composition isn't going to slow us down really any, other than the kind of the Diva and her Matrix. But we should just kind of pressure shield, allow the tanks to occupy space, and after we get through the choke, kind of take the platform and help onto point. Just by kind of setting up here, you should have really good visibility on this onto point at that point. So let's check out how we do it. We're gonna close this. Whatever.
Capture objective A.
All right, so this is good. Just playing out the window. I like that one. This is so because of our idea of wanting to play back and spammy. I think this is a good opportunity where you would want to use your sonic arrow or your storm arrows into the shield. So now I just saw the Reaper there. That's when we know that we have Reaper. And remember, at 15 seconds, the comps are revealed. So if you don't know exactly what they're playing, after 15 seconds, just take a second, hide around a corner, check the comps, start thinking about what you want to do and how you want to play a little differently. Unless, of course, you're in like a mobile fight. But okay, so Reaper's doing a little flank around. I think this is really good peel. It's a good idea to play against him. And I'm going to do something kind of silly here, though. And that's dropping down even closer into Reaper's ideal range. If you're playing high ground, he can't get up there. He has to go all the way around. You can play him a lot easier, but I think your Hanzo's just drawn to be up in people's face, and even if that's a Reaper. So I think this is a very dangerous move to try and play the Reaper at this range. Luckily he's weak, and you're going to hit a nice headshot on him. So we're going to go back to the value we're getting, and I should probably show it. So we have a nice Sonic arrow that came out. We saw the red highlight. So Sonic, this is going to help show our composition, because not everyone can just play this straight up. Like the tank's going to want to be a little careful, and this allows them that they can see what's going on and who they have while being behind the cover, which is good. We're going to put a storm arrow into the shield, so we're going to shield break. I think this is good shield break value coming out, or at least shield pressure. And then we saw our kill onto the Reaper, so we're going to say pick. Alright, and that's the value we've seen so far. Let's move up to when we kill the Reaper. Nice flick though. Alright. So here's another thing. I mean, I'm just noticing you like to go the direction the team's going. It's almost like you're allowing them to do the thinking for you on your pathing, even though it's probably better to play somewhere else. So after you kill this Reaper, you could just, you know, climb back up on this platform and have a nice line of sight on the point here. So just climb up here and, you know, play off there. What you're going to do is you're going to see your surroundings, see where your team is, and follow directly behind them. So it's good. We're going to shoot the mortality field. And then we see our teams over to the left, and what we're going to do is we're going to rotate with them. And I don't think this is very good. I think getting a different angle is always better, especially if you're up in the fight where it's going to be harder for them to contest you. If they want to invest everything into killing you, you can probably still get away. And at the meantime, it's going to let your team wipe them clean. So I think just, you know, coming up the stairs potentially, or even better going further along the right side. I can't draw that far. Okay. But just, I think getting a different angle, a cross angle that's going to apply just more pressure onto their team than just playing straight up with your team. Again, it makes them make decisions, and if they have to make more decisions, they're more likely to make mistakes. I like that you're pushing up as they're capping. This is good. And chase soldier off, who died early. So he's running back. So we're going into fight 2 here. So our total count there was, again, 3. We're having a lot of 3s and a 2. So that's kind of been about our average, is 3 ticks of value. We're going into the next fight, and I call this pretty much leading to the next fight already, that we're zoning. And even though we zoned the soldier here, we're going to continue this zoning streak as we push forward. So So this is what you're doing is you're just defending the courtyard. And that's pretty good. It's saying nope, you can't come out to the courtyard. I got this. And that was a good Sonic arrow, especially because your team is just starting to come. It's going to make them understand this is where they're at. So Sonic arrow value also occurred. So even though you're not getting full on picks, these are still points of value that I'm giving you because you're denying the courtyard and you're showing your teammate where they are, that they're playing up in front in the choke. And now your team is going to be able to play better because of these things. All right, we're doing a lot of shield pressure, and that's going to be our next tick. All right, so we died to a Diva Bomb. That was just a really good bomb, honestly. Like, I can't really fault you for dying for that one. I think you made a pretty good read. Maybe you could have been just barely faster, but ultimately pretty good. So, I'm going to say shield pressure. So that's, again, 3 ticks of value you supplied, even though you didn't get a kill. I think you're the reason why your team was able to get a lot of space moving in. The Diva made a big play to counter what you were doing. Ultimately, to kill you as the first pick. Picks are huge. But I think the value allowed a lot of momentum in your team's favor as your approaching point, making it far more likely that you could have had that snowball. So I think that was pretty decent. Maybe if you lived a little longer, you would have had more points of value. So I think that was actually decent on your part. So we're coming up on Dragon into this next fight. Fight number 2 on point 2. Okay. a ton of missed shots, right? So let's go dissect why we're missing so many shots. I'm just going to let this play, and I want people to think about it. The answer is you're putting on a ton of jukes right here and being completely uncontested. I think if you just take the time and aren't jumping, aren't strafing every which way, you're probably just going into autopilot mode on, okay, I'm in a duel, but he's not dueling you. You aren't being contested at all. I mean, you don't have to stay perfectly still, but if you're not jumping, if you're maybe just like strafing, one way, just doing a hard strafe, you're probably gonna be more likely to hit these shots instead of just strafe jump. So just take it back one more time and see it for a third time. So we get the kill on him, so that's at least value. So here is a cool moment where we're playing away from our team, and I feel like this is a safe situation to do so. We see our team pushing in left, we have a pick, and we're just making sure that we hold main while our team pushes left. And it's going to give us an opposing line of sight. So in this moment, this is a good example of how, in a way, you are zoning the team. So while your team is pushing left side, you're making sure you're zoning this entire front side. And if something that can't, stay in your line of sight comes that way, they're at extreme risk. Like, you've already put some damage into, I think it's their Zarya or Diva or something, their off tank, I think it was. And they had to peace out. Like, this front side is completely clear. And it's going to give you access. It's going to create space for your team. If they have to bail out, it's going to give another point of attack for them. So this is good. I'm going to erase. And so far we've gotten a kill. So pick onto the soldier. I'll give that one to you, even though it took 10 shots. And then we're also zoning. So that's 2 points of value so far as we go into this second fight. So now, to deal with you, the Reinhardt is coming to contest you. Again, this is still zoning. Now, their main tank is shielding your path, allowing your team to flank around and get a ton of pressure on everybody else. So this is a trade, even though it's a one-on-one, and you even hit a headshot onto the Reinhardt, This is huge for your team. So, um, yeah, I really like how you're playing this. And then the dragon here, also really good. I think the angle's good. Um, so we have a Sonic that's going to show where people are. I think this is going to help your team too. So we have Sonic value. And the angle we take is going to go straight up towards the statue. If it was me, I might have gone just a little bit more to the left. That way it'll help your team get more access and kind of zone in a straight path down this way. And as we saw, they were kind of over in this area in general. So more likely to split their team in half. If this one you pushed, it's going to do damage and it's going to force them into your team, instead of potentially isolating targets. I don't think it's a bad dragon. I think just how I was reading it live, I would have shoved it maybe just slightly more to the left. But that's pretty nitpicky. All right. So what do we say? We got pick on the soldier. We got zoning the team just by us having a different line of sight. We got a kill onto the Reinhardt with our dragon. And we have like an assist onto the Diva. So I'm going to give you 4 points there. So this one was a pretty good one. Yeah, so this is probably your best fight, and I just liked how you played it positioning. I liked the amount of damage pressure you're able to contribute. And I think just playing this way as Hanzo is really strong. Even though it took a lot of shots to kill the soldier, I think you supplied a lot of help into this fight. That's going to ultimately allow you to cap second and win the match. Spoiler alert. Congratulations! And Thunderstruck starts. Alright. So, that's what I had to talk about. Hopefully, Reg, you learned from this, and anyone else who happens to tune in to this probably longer than expected episode of Alumni VOD Reviews. Thanks, guys.